I wanted to thank you for doing the interview with us. Can you tell us what your name is?
So my name is Chris Gazaleh.
And where are you from, Chris?
From Ramallah, Palestine.
And were you born there or were you born in the U.S.?
Born in the U.S. I was born in San Francisco, and also my parents are born in the States as well. So I'm second generation.
Okay. And do you know anything about how they came to the U.S.?
My grandparents, yes. My dad's side, it's my grandfather was born a U.S. citizen. My dad's dad was born with U.S. citizenship because his father, Gazaleh, came with his father in 1908, if I'm not mistaken. My great grandfather Khalil, or Charles, aka Charles, was not let on the boat in England to come to Ellis Island because he had something wrong with his eye, so they wouldn't let him get on, and so his father literally left him in England for a whole year by himself at 7 years old, and I guess he paid a family to watch him for a year, or maybe he sent them money when he came to America. But regardless, my great-grandfather came by himself to the United States eventually a year later, in I think around 1910, and they lived in the United States until 1920. They had a farm in Pennsylvania, and somehow they left and they came back to Palestine in 1920. And in this photo behind me is my great-grandfather's wedding, and then he stayed till 1954, and my grandfather, who was his son, in 1947 got a letter in the mail saying that he had to return to he had to come to the United States, and he had to live there for maybe 7 years to get his citizenship back, and also they said if you join the army, you'll be able to expedite the process, or solidify your citizenship. So when he came back to the U.S., or he joined the army, and I'm pretty sure he started in Pennsylvania, got back into the army, and then after the army he had ended up back in Detroit, and that's where he kind of built the foundation for my family. Sent my grandmother and all his younger brothers and his dad and his dad's wife all to the United States about 1954. And so that's my father's side. That's the story of the immigration.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did he serve in any wars?
So he was stationed in Germany in 1947 to 1948, 49 to 1951. He was stationed, I believe, in Germany, and so he didn't, do any fighting or anything. But he was just he was he was just like a soldier first. But what happened was they asked him, what did you do in Jerusalem, in Palestine when you lived there? What did you do? And he said, I worked at the post office, because that's what he did. He worked at the post office in Jerusalem. And they said, okay, we'll put you in the mailroom. So they put him in the mailroom, and my Sido saw the mailroom, and he was like, it was a mess. He said, he said a place was a mess. And so what he did was he organized everything A to Z, really, really nice, clean. And the officer came in, and he was like, what'd you do? He's like, who did this? He's like, I did it. It was a mess, And the guy said, come here. And he took him, and he bumped him up a rank, because he saw this guy's not he's not a fool. He has he has he's got a useful brain or whatever. And there's a lot of guys in the army who were very poor. He dealt with a lot of racism when he was in the army, because there was a lot of poor whites from the South who were just super racist. And he told me he had a lot of situations where he was getting messed with a lot, and he had to in his own words, he had to smack him up a few times when he got that upper rank. he
in charge of him.
He was in charge of him, and so the crap they used to talk, he would just and he had to stand up for himself, so then after that he came to Detroit, and then my family they opened up a restaurant, and then they opened up 2 restaurants near downtown Detroit. One in New Center, I think, in that area. and then eventually they had a liquor store, party store as we call it in Michigan, in Wayne, and then they kind of like retired after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so your family was based in Detroit. How did you end up in San Francisco?
So I was born in San Francisco. So my mother was actually born in Louisville, Kentucky. It was the first place they came after when they left Palestine. They actually came as refugees from Palestine. My grandfather lived in Haifa in 1948, and he was kicked out of Haifa. And since he was from Ramallah, he went to Ramallah, and was a long story with that whole side, because my grandparents met in Haifa, because my mom's mom, her dad was in the United States in New York. He had a grocery store in New York, and he was there with maybe a cousin, and they heard like through the grapevine in New York that something was going to happen in Palestine, and so they came back actually in like 1947, maybe, I don't know if it was early 48, but they came back in that time, and their ship got seized on the port. They had some like weapons they were bringing back, and their ship got seized because the Zionists, I think they realized that they were bringing, stuff to help. And my grandfather, who lived in Akka, but he worked in Haifa on the port with his uncle, Fuad Harb was his name. He smuggled my great-grandfather, Mina Khouri, off the boat to get into Haifa because they wouldn't let them dock. So somehow he smuggled him off the boat and got him on land. And that's when my teta met her dad for the first time. And then my grandfather met her because her uncle brought her from Ramallah to Haifa to meet her dad for the first time and to greet him. And my grandfather just so happened to be from Ramallah and was the one to help them, get him off the boat. And so that's how they met. And then my grandfather, fell madly in love with my grandmother and chased her down and just sent her letters, and she tore him up and threw him away. She didn't want anything to do with him. Until eventually somehow he won her heart, and just, how it is.
Old-fashioned love.
Old-fashioned, man, let's just stalk them until they...
So they fall in love with you.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
So I'm an artist. I'm a muralist, illustrator, storyteller. So basically, my work, it comes from my own experience as a Palestinian American. My inspiration comes from elements of our American culture, like hip hop, and being able to tell a story. And graffiti was a big part of my upbringing, being involved in the hip hop culture, learning a lot about the different elements, rapping and graffiti and different types of dance, and also my culture as a Palestinian, the elements of our culture like debka and like our Arabic, our calligraphy, and all these elements of our culture. I see a lot of crossover, intersectionality. There's a lot of connections, between the story of the African American, who's oppressed in the United States, and the culture that was created from that, which basically is American culture. It's created the flavor for American culture to have something to say. This is American, and our culture as Palestinians, is being also attacked, and in a sense, our culture is a form of resistance by itself, and elements of American culture like hip hop are also forms of resistance, and they definitely are connected. And you can see that when you go to Palestine and see how many people are into hip hop and rap. They're so inspired, because it's a good medium, to get out and to spread knowledge and spread a message, And so that's really a big inspiration of mine. Just these elements, hip hop, like rapping and graffiti, and one of the things that I like to think that I do is when I'm creating my imagery, I'm trying to create imagery that is about almost like about the future. Like I'm drawing from the past, but I'm I'm also like carving a path to the future. So bringing up like the old imagery, like the imagery from the 60s and the 50s and the years of the Fedayeen, the Fedayeen, the freedom fighters, and kind of bringing that back into our imagination, and showing that our, Palestine is a place that has been strategically, uprooted, and and I try to remind people that it's just like anywhere else in the world, and it's just been uprooted. You ask people from Greece or from another country, Portugal, like, oh, can you go back to your country? And of course they can, go back and stuff. And we say, Palestine should be preserved, and that's why I appreciate what you're doing with the preservation project. But yeah, I guess I like to agitate. With my work, I like to agitate a little bit. More of my street art is about kind of getting under, like, definitely getting under the Zionist skin, letting them know that we're not going to be quiet, because I think it's important to do that. At the same time, it's really important for us to just be documenting our culture and to be, creating within the space we feel comfortable and telling or doing our best to tell a story, and I kind of went off on that question.
Oh, absolutely, it was perfect.
Yeah.
So when you're working on a piece of work, or whether you're working on a mural, what's the thought process while you do it? Where do you get the idea from? How long does it take you? And yeah, could you tell us about that?
So it really depends on the piece. It depends on the actual the idea for the piece. Some stuff could take me minutes, quick sketch up, just kind of like a freestyling, almost like my graffiti element, which is kind of fast and direct, and then there's the other work that I do that's a little more of the storytelling kind of, more imagery, settings, landscapes. So it really depends on the piece that I'm working on. Some stuff takes me months, some things take me years, and then some things take me minutes. So it really depends. I have different styles, and I try to use them all, and they all kind of come from different how do you say, like, identities of my creative, art kind of practice.
Absolutely. And have you ever used like a past artist as a form of inspiration, or is everything you do just kind of like it's your own thing?
No, for sure. I'm very inspired by many artists. I'm inspired by Palestinian artists of the past, and even just Arab artists and other artists in general. Like let's see. Burhan Karkutli was a Syrian artist. He was a revolutionary artist from the 60s and actually, was it the 60s and 70s? Yeah, I think he was around like mostly in the 70s, but I'm still not even 100% sure how he got his, like how he did his, mostly it was all black and white. Most of his work was black and white. And I'm not sure if it was like linograph or it was like etchings, but the texture of his work like really inspired me to kind of keep pursuing my art, because I did a lot of black and white stuff, and it was very inspirational. And also Suleiman Mansour, and who else? Oh man, Muazzin, but I forget the last name. Muazzin. He's another amazing Palestinian artist. Like a lot of these Palestinian artists really like inspire me to just like to go along with my own thing, because the interesting thing is that like I would see something, I would draw something or paint something, and this is before I even seen these artists, and then I would see their art and I would see like these weird similarities between some of the things I was doing and their art, and I was like, this is crazy, like this is weird, because I don't see this in any other type of art other than Palestinian art. The faces, the suns, the oranges, the just like the creative like process, it seems like we're all kind of connected, you know, like through the imagery of what we think about and what we're imagining and envisioning. And not to say that all Palestinians do the same thing, but there were some similarities between the artists that inspired me, you know, yeah. So I'm inspired by that, but I'm also inspired by like people, like graffiti artists from the United States, who I grew up seeing, you know, like people like Dream, who's a famous graffiti writer, and Spy, who's another well-known community activist and old school graffiti writer from San Francisco, and also a friend of mine. And so, you know, I'm inspired by many different things, you know, creatively, and yeah, and I try to keep an open mind, you know, like and looking at, you know, different styles of art. Like I don't want to keep myself in a box and just do one type of art, you know. But I'm inspired by, you know, so many different people who make movies, you know, everything. Like
everything has its own art form.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you could give a piece of advice to the youth of the Ramallah community or Arab Americans, aspiring artists, what can you tell them?
Yeah, I would just tell them to, you know, create and to make mistakes, and to not, you know, don't hold back. Go with your gut, and if there's no support for you, you have to find support. And if you have trouble, then you have to try harder. You might feel like you're on your own, but you have to keep pushing. And even if people are like, "Oh, that's nice," you know, we have to really value art and value it just like we value anything else. If you go to the dentist and the guy charges you $185 an hour to check your teeth, well, you know, if you want a mural, you better expect, you know, the muralists to get paid too for their work, because it's a profession, it's work, it's an emotional work, it's physical, it's a lot of things, but it's work, and it needs to be valued. And artists in our community have a very, very important task. You know, we have a very important job. And you know, some people say it's oh, just do your thing, you don't have to be political, but you know what, it's not. That's, and I just want to say this, you know, being apolitical is a political move. You're making a political move by saying you don't want to be political is a political choice. So it's funny when people say, "Oh, don't make it political," or "Don't." It's like everything's political, you know. And basically, what they're saying is, don't get us boycotted by, you know who, the Zionists, you know. So there's a lot of fear. But I would also say, as a political artist and somebody who's doing art that is to speak out and speak truth to power, you can't be scared. You can't let anybody intimidate you or scare you, or make you feel like you're gonna fail, because we can't be like that. If we are, then we might as well just give up now, and we're not gonna do that. So, you know.
All right. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Awesome, man.
That's a wrap.
Thank you, George. Thank
you. Of course.